waiting for him to come online. Hi.
Hi there. Nice
That
to see
wasn't
you.
nice to see you too. That wasn't too hard, was it?
Halfway around the world from Ubud those days of having coffee. Now we're telecoffee.
I know. It's amazing. It's so great to see you and to connect with you again. Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste. And I almost, as we're just talking prior to jumping onto this live, and I honestly just want to throw out all the plans that I had, because we sort of already started the conversation and had warmed up a little bit. But to those of you who are watching and who may not be aware of who Alan Clements is, I really encourage you to go check out his website, which is worlddharma.com, to learn so much more about him. But I'll just briefly introduce you, if that's okay.
Please keep it short, though. Keep it short so we can talk.
I know.
Please.
So we met recently at the Tunshe Global Consciousness Summit here in Bali, where it was talking about sacred leadership. And then we met afterwards and we discovered that we really were in alignment in terms of our views on addiction and the recovery process and how that kind of plays out in the world. The thing that I found most enticing about you and that really struck me was your ability to be so eloquent with the way that you speak and the teachings that you share, and the way that you share them really allows people to embody them and to really feel what it is, rather than just a bunch of words being thrown at them, basically. You know, and I was comparing this to, like, when I was promoting this Facebook Live yesterday, our ways of communicating were so different. Yours felt like poetry, where mine felt like this masculine kind of clunkiness that was going on. But for me, you know, it's like practice makes perfect, you know, when we start to share our words and our thoughts. And I really look up to you in that space in terms of being able to articulate very well. You've spent many years in Burma in a Buddhist monastery. Was it about 20 years that you were there?
No, I had a very awkward relationship to Burma. But to answer your question, if you were to total all my time in a monastery, perhaps 8 years, 4 years as a monk, but I was thrown out 4 separate times. I've been blacklisted for 17 years. I've gone in underground. I've done lots of different things in the country, in monasteries, around monasteries, and trans-monastic. But most of my life has been in Myanmar, known as Burma as well. So yes, but some of it in a monastery, most of it out of a monastery.
Yeah. And but this is where you learnt a lot of your teachings that you share with the world now, or
no?
Or is this no?
No, it's my immediate intimate response is I've learned. I think every one of us learn everything, everywhere.
Yeah.
And if I were to encapsulate what is the essence of a teaching that I've received in the world, is to open my heart, open my mind to the everywhere, always, everything standard of being, so that you do not segregate or create an unrecognizable apartheid in your spiritual, sexual, romantic, existential life. We are ambient creatures. We can never not breathe. We can never not be in our spirituality if we embrace breathing as the necessity or the oxygen of human consciousness. So when we do that, we take, you know, for me, we take location and preference and apartheid out of consciousness. There's no longer yoga off the mat. There's no longer meditation off the cushion. We are always in life. And that Dharma teaching is, to me, what I've taken out of Burma.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, we might just dive straight in, because as you're speaking, I know I've got a little story I want to share. I was actually in LA about 10 years ago, of all places, when I was kind of coming out of my numb state of being in a addictive way of living life. And I was at the Getty, of all places, and I stumbled across this really famous painting that I love called I wrote it down here so I don't forget, The Garden of Earthly Delights. I'm not sure if you're aware of that that painting. But I was standing there in front of it, and I'm just going to describe it because I felt like it was such a great reflection of our relationship between love and sex and addiction, and how to really walk that in this world. And it's a painting that's in 3 different sections, and the first section on the left is this beautiful, pristine, harmonious world where, you know, there's beautiful landscape and animals, and there's you know, a man and a woman standing there, and there's this God spirit-like figure behind it, you know, and it's just all beautiful. And then you go to this middle section, which is the biggest section of this painting, and it's like this huge orgy of chaos and sensuality and sexuality and exploration, curiosity and playfulness and fun. It's kind of like a Where's Wally of sensuality. When you look at it, there's so much detail in there that you could be, you know, captivated by that for such a long time. But then on the right hand side is this other panel where it's like the world becomes dark. It's like it's depleted, it's exhausted, it's you know, all of its life is gone, and there's, you know, not many people around, and everyone's kind of just, you know, deflated. To me, when I stood in front of that painting at that point in time, I really felt that it was a strong message to me as to, like, what is your relationship between love? What is your relationship with sex? And what is your relationship with understanding your addictions? Because it was like, it went from pristine to fun and play to like this sort of down and dirty and out kind of way of living. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is how do we really walk in the world with all of these, you know, in a world full of earthly delights, basically.
Okay.
Just
sure.
a small question.
Well, all I can say is how I feel you, how I feel the question, how I'm embodying the energy of being with you. And what comes to my heart is the importance for me. I can't speak for anyone else. I have no teaching. I'm in the school of don't follow me. I'm an ordinary human being working it out. But choice is my point. I treasure choice. The way someone approaches me and they look at me, I'm seeing that they have a choice, and I have a choice to engage her or him or God or a cloud or a squirrel or a rabbit or a priest or a priestess or an enemy, a rifle, a gun, an assassin, a political choice. We have choices. And do we really want to embody the intelligence of what I would call conscious choice making? And then we make good on the promise of our integrity, because we can make a decision what feels right from what feels wrong. We can make a decision of what feels beneficial for someone and what feels detrimental to us. That choice making is the question of philosophy, of wisdom, of all the great schools that embody what is wise, mindful, intelligent choice. So for me, the spiritual life, the Dharma life, the human life is the embodiment of wise choice that is in high consideration of what elevates you and how I feel that elevates me, what denigrates you and how I would feel what denigrates me. So there's a freedom in reciprocity, mutuality, mutual belonging, and choice are the first 2 considerations in what I would consider to be living a dignified human life. And it could be applied to anything that we do in communication, conversation, physical intimacy, sexual intimacy, gardening, yoga, anything at all that involves life with life. How well do we show up with choice? And choice isn't just to do what I want to do when I want to do it, obviously. Having the skill, the courage, and the ethical wisdom, the choice to restrain or to interrupt a habit when we're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because I remember, you know, I was engaged when I was 19, and it was a relationship for 3 years, and it didn't work out, and it ended, and I was like, that's it. If that's what love and relationships and marriage is all about, I don't want to have a bar of it. And I made that choice of like, I want to be on my own. I want to explore. I want to just be, you know, the keeper of my own domain, basically. But over time, that became a destructive pattern, and it took a lot of numbing out and not being aware of the choices that I was making and how harmful they were to myself, that it became a real crisis kind of situation. Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I come back to somewhat of a boring topic, which is meditation, which has been, I would call it my raison d'etre from my young life to my present moment. And meditation and yoga are very synonymous with me, as well as Tantra. I mean, they're all roads, all energies for me converge in the concept of meditation. What is meditation in the training that I embodied? And I've said this quite frequently when I was leading groups in Ubud, but I've been saying it for decades, is the beautification of being. And in order to understand how to beautify one's own mind, we must understand, I feel, how do you intimately feel with cognizant understanding? Like you and I can see each other across continents right now.
Yeah.
You can see the color of my skin, you can hear my words, you can translate them through the filters of your own prejudice or your own awakening. I can see your background, you can see my background. How well do we see each other? How well do we see ourselves is the meditative lens. And it's not just seeing, but it also requires the incredibly challenging felt reality. And so when we talk about states of consciousness, it's not just knowing a state, it's learning how to feel that state in its characteristic, in its manifestation. It takes a very nimble mind to mindfully inhabit a state of consciousness and, okay, this is the state of trust. This is the state of kindness. Now just think of how skilled an individual can be if all of a sudden you're triggered and you feel that you're projecting onto something or someone a sense of blame. And you have studied the felt reality of blame. And you mindfully interrupt that blame on the spot or within a second or a minute or two, and you feel how it contracts your own consciousness.
Yeah.
And you learn the integrity of that contraction to be one of insult to self. Much more so than the adrenaline habit or the addiction to blame as virtue. So you can see how we can point to these energies through words, but it takes a very skilled mind to meditatively inhabit the felt energetic reality of the state of consciousness. And that is the Dharma, that's the spiritual life, and that's meditation to me. How well do we know the state on the terms of its characteristic, its reality, its manifestation?
So it's like the meditation to really be in tune with how we're feeling and the emotions and how we're responding to the world. But then there's almost like a walking meditation of where you're actually in the world and knowing what your response is knowing the mechanics basically of what that response is that you're having to that person or that situation in front of you.
Well, there's
and then
one
having
thing,
a choice behind it, right?
Yeah, you could say it that way for sure. I mean, that's part of the beauty of life is the individual expression of these timeless principles. But it's sort of the way I was encouraged with my teachers, Melanie, that, I lived the life of an artist from a young age. From music to dance to eventually visual arts. And now I do spoken word. But I also do human life art, Dharma art. And it's the study of energy.
Yeah.
And it's really like taking the analogy of a visual artist, a painter, and colors on his or her palette, the palette of consciousness. And you go, okay, what is the color of red, Alan? There it is, that's love. How do you know that that's truly love versus attachment fused with joy, called the color of habit? And how do you know that that habit of joy is projected on another whom you now are reliant on to give you that belief in your own sense of joy? So you have the color of projection, you have the color of joy, you have the color of attachment, and you mislabel it as love. The artist would know, not a Michelangelo, needless to say, but a meditator would know, oh, no, 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 no. You're mistaking those energies for love. Please correct the habit of mislabeling them. And that's the awakening game. And that
Yeah.
often comes from the sensitivity of a mind more and more attuned, I would say, through diet, through yoga, through meditation, through nature, through the visceral sense of what it means to commune with another person. I would say my greatest meditation in life has been the woman as a heterosexual.
Yeah.
I mean, I have not seen a yoga more intimately challenging to understand the mislabeling of colors and the aligning of those colors. And then when there's harmony, that to me is high sex. That's high intimacy. That's the post-tantra world that we're in.
Yeah. Could you perhaps, there's so many questions in my head right now, but could you perhaps share with us, like, you know, we've all kind of been around the block a few times. We've all had so many different types of relationships, and you know, you're saying that you find you've learned so much from your relationships with women. How has that progressed over the years, do you feel?
That's so funny you would ask that. You know, I laugh out loud, and this is the first for me to say this. This is like as authentic can be for me. You know, I came out of a monastery, Melanie, and those who know me will know that I'm telling the truth, thinking I was enlightened. And now that's not a joke, because in the Buddhist tradition, enlightenment is a reality that's doable.
Yeah.
I mean, they make it so there. But nonetheless, I lived in the fusion with the concept rather than a process like a verb. There's an awakening rather than awakened. There's truth that's an infinite gradation of awakening, but it's not a capital T yet. I came out with an unrecognized dogma associated with my awakening. And I taught from duality. I taught from I know, you don't. Very elegantly, mind you.
Yeah.
So as I progressed over the years, teaching retreats to larger and larger numbers with greater and greater applause and more money and more of a double, triple, quadruple life that associated with my denial, I found that my real sensual, intuitive sense of being in life was in relationship. I had left my family in the monastery. I was thrown out, as I mentioned, by the dictator. And now I was cast back into the world. And the most familiar instinct for me was the feminine. My mom had 7 sisters. Her mother had 7 sisters. I was, one of 25 grandchildren, most of them women. I mean, there was a lot of women in my life, and not the multiplicity, but I really loved the feminine. And so I found myself naturally, like a heterosexual, gravitating towards intimate relationship. I've had beautiful relationships in my life, fantastic, pre-enlightenment.
Free enlightenment, right?
That's the point, is that, but progressively over the decades, post-Buddhist awakening, I have found this incredible incongruence with my so-called spiritual life, where I was a meditator. I was doing intensive psychotherapy with one of San Francisco's finest female psychotherapists. I was doing ayahuasca in 1990, DMT and 5-MeO and MDMA psychotherapy. My point was, I was utilizing every timeless transformational principle, and yet my relationships were progressively more and more difficult.
Yeah.
I had to look, oh my goodness, what have I missed here? And it's not bypassing, screw bypassing. You can be the most thoroughly integrated human being that didn't bypass and go to a war zone, and you're crying like a baby. And babies aren't even crying like you are. So where's your bypassing? It's all contextual. But relationship intimacy and the awakening through sexuality, to the deep primordial forces of bonding, those those attributes are almost as if it's a separate spiritual journey altogether. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to mix them both alone, but trying to have some integration. Because when you're up close to another human being where there's jealousies and fears and projections, that is such a challenging dynamic, to the point where I feel that the greatest meditation for me today, the great unexplored, the next frontier, is in the power of the intimate relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's the opposite of the kind of, I'm just decidedly non-polyamorous. I'm a polyamorous celibate, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I was in my relationship, I just keep going on about this, but I had a relationship that ended about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, bade her farewell into her new life. But I chose after that to be consciously celibate, and still have been a year later. Which
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're not intimate, but you're not physically, sexually intimate with yourself, or with, in my case, a woman. But I've reinvented making love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And therein lies my safety, my tenderness, my own self-respect, to be much more available to the communion of conversation, the communion of sharing our poetry together,
Mm-hmm.
the communion of having a meal together, the communion of eye contact, smell contact, physical contact, just simply holding hands, walking in nature, listening to music, making poetry, making humor and satire, being silent together. There's so much to be said for the subtleties of consciousness as a new form of lovemaking today, for
Mm.
me. And so going slow is the opposite of addiction.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah. Yeah.
looking for a way to beautify your addiction, two things that I would suggest is to look at the ways you demonize addiction as something to overcome.
Mm.
Reverse that as something to inhabit with beauty. And it's
Yeah.
very tantric in a way to do what you consider to be detrimental in a more full, beautiful way.
Mm.
Slow down sexually.
Mm.
Slow down watching porn. Slow way down self-pleasuring yourself. Don't
Yeah.
come.
Mm.
Slow down if you smoke cigarettes. One inhalation at a time. We're in a monastery. Almost everyone there was an addict. Everyone's
Yeah.
an addict. Everyone's
Yeah.
an addict. Be sure of it.
I
There,
believe that.
some,
How can you not be? There's so
look,
much around us all the time. Social
look,
media, like everything.
look at yoga teachers
Mm.
practicing 3 and 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day. It's
Mm.
cloaked often in transformational wisdom, but it's often an addiction.
Mm.
Some
Mm.
of the, I was saying earlier that some of the most annoying people on earth are meditation teachers. They're just
Yeah.
addicted to being teachers and breath watchers
Yeah.
and thought dissers.
Can I just regress just a little bit back to our relationship with sex and really learning? Because I feel like men and women have a different relationship with their sexuality and their sensuality. And I love learning about it. I've been really researching a lot and learning as much as I can about it. And I've actually got, it's really funny, at the moment I've got two books by my bed. One's called Pussy and the other one's called The Way of the Superior Man. And this is how I'm starting to understand, like, there's just differences between us in how we are with our sensuality. Um, One question that I get asked a lot from men is, how do they slow their sex drive down? Because I feel like as a woman who has been through a love and sex addictive state, it was quite easy for me to sort of pull back and just, sort myself out to then, step again into the world. It just feels to me that men have a bigger hurdle with doing that than, say, a woman would have.
How do you interrupt unconscious behaviors to increase more choice that respects your partner's needs more than your own. One is to start inhabiting the other person rather than your own greed, ego, and narcissism. Learning how to see the folly of those energies within your own being as essentially the unconscious precursor to separation, domination, violation, and ultimately violence. And to overcome this need to be you regardless, and understand that life is an interrelated phenomena called us and we. And what does it mean to deoccupy my own need for me and to feel you as beautiful to me? So that's the deal here, is how well can an individual listen? So if we're in a relationship, why would I want to be in a relationship with you as woman, if I'm not there to listen and learn from you? What? Is it just a yoni, breasts, physical flesh, a habit satisfied so I can go back out and drink my wine and write my books and become a famous guru on the scene and, whatever. You're just an addendum to my success. You are the vehicle. We are together in this transformational, organic, felt reality. We're going to take it as high and as deep and as beautiful as possible. We're going to be that rare individual together called heightened chemistry. We're going to take love to a new vista. We're going to create magic. We're going to change the world through our love. One person at a time, you and me, day by day. If we're not doing that, what the fuck are you doing? And I don't judge it, but I'm not interested. That doesn't mean that it's wrong. So coupled with that, again, listen to your partner and just say, no, Larry, you're not hearing me. Go, okay, listen, I am only in this relationship to hear you. And I want you to know, please tell me if I'm really hearing you correctly. You heard it. Now, secondly, I'm committed to changing on the spot. Hearing and changing go hand in hand. I'm not satisfied with just listening to you. I'm totally committed to changing to support the evolution of us. That's the theory. I would like to see an individual manifest that. And so bottom line is having the courage to be honest, to speak wisely, lovingly, kindly, be patient. I can't say men or women are right or wrong, above or below. We all have everything, at different times. But love me sufficiently to say it in different ways. I'm fully here for you and us to learn from you. Help me understand us by telling me honestly and directly what I don't see. Equally to that is the opposite, which is the heightened beautification of shared space, the poetry of shared romance, that which I love in you, to complement it, to see it, to anoint it, to speak to it, to write love notes through it, to create music around it, do everything to elevate the beauty you see in the other. So you overcome obstacle and you heighten the beauty. And that, to me, that dyad is what life is.
Yeah. And with that, actually, I'm just going to, while I'm talking, I'm just needing to plug my phone in because it's running out of battery. But there's an element of really understanding self and being in love with self, as well, wouldn't you say? Because a lot of people are single, say people that aren't in relationships, and they're looking for that relationship, but they're attracting these people that won't listen or won't, have those more conscious types of relationships. I feel like that's where the learning is, to really understand self and learn how to love yourself first, so you can say no to those situations and those meetings, and know that you're worth more than that. Know that you're worth a better conversation, a better relationship with people.
Should be mandatory that as soon as there's chemistry, a therapist appears. This is where the closest thing to therapy is mindful intelligence, I've seen, is, and again, that really, to decipher that concept, is the ability, the evolutional, lifelong challenge ability to know a state of mind as it really is. And that's where psychotherapeutic, entheogenic, meditative, yogic, dietary, wise, reflective, intimate relationships, all those different elements that make up the good life, we need to bring them more and more into our heart and keep evolving individually. And I think we will, and cliched as it is, we attract the edges of where we need to grow.
Yeah.
And if I've written books and I get editors that are as proportionate to my skill as a writer.
Yeah, right.
The better you are, the better the editors.
Yeah.
And so there's something wise about the weirdness of life. And I think this is where going slow, because I don't understand chemistry, I don't understand the soul. I mean, I can say words that speak to it, but I can't create life other than through birth with a woman. And even so, it's utterly mystery. But what I can do is afford me the vulnerability to gift myself in you and any friends near me with the openness to discover that which we are and that which we evolve into and through. Now, these are just words, but if we were in a room where there was light and there was nutrient and there was physical contact and there was oxygen, there are tangible realities to sustain existence. You can't live without touch. You can't live without food. I'm saying the obvious. You can't live without oxygen. You can't live without light. But to know your light of consciousness, to know your nutrient of consciousness, to know your minerals of consciousness, to know your oxygen of consciousness, and how to oxygenate states of mind so that you live in the state of truth, boundary, reciprocity, kindness. Ah, I'm sensitive. That was a very controlling, coercive energy. Can I just check that out with you? You have courage to be honest. No, that wasn't that. You just took that for that, but I'm so grateful that you brought it up. Ah, greater degrees of trust and openness. Studying consciousness is the nature of the Dharma. It's the study of yoga. It's the study of meditation. I want to make a point. I'm coming back to Bali in early October. We're doing a couple of retreats, and I'm doing one in Ubud, November 19th to the 24th. And it's by way of saying, anyone who wants to come, I'm happy to do what I can to support you. It's really about the beautification of consciousness, the aesthetics of the senses, the art of not fitting in, how to understand wise boundary and intimacy. It's the new paradigm for me, and I really invite people. We can only have 20 people.
Yeah.
But those who want to come can commute. But if you need financial support or whatever, I'm there to help you to do that. I do it. This is the first retreat in a couple of years.
Yeah.
But just know that what I'm saying and what we're discussing, if you want to follow up on that, just reach out to me in any way. I'll do all that I can to see that you're there.
Absolutely. And I think, that, you're saying that you're learning about the senses in, say, in the retreat that you're running, that's part of it. I really feel like people need to understand they are sensitive. There is such a culture out there of, having to be hard, having to be the hustler, having to have drive, having to, make it. And, that means losing your sensitivity, which I don't feel is truth at all. I feel like the best leaders and the best conscious leaders are actually the sensitive ones, the ones that can tune in and say, hey, I didn't appreciate, that way you communicated to me didn't make me feel good. Or, we can put niceties. We can be nice in our communication. We don't have to be so direct all the time. How do you feel about that?
Well, the immediate word that comes to mind is, what do you want to be? And giving yourself, I would call it, gradually evolving permission to inhabit the vocation of your soul, you know, and not to believe anyone on what you should be or not be. If you want to be an artist, choose your medium and express her in the way that's you being you on the canvas of you, being true to your wisdom of art. So I guess my response to that is some of the finest soldiers are artists. It's proven, it's been seen by generals of armies. There's something about the aesthetics that isn't masculine or feminine, it isn't strong or radically masculine and courageous. It knows how to weep, it knows how to cry. There probably isn't an individual on this planet who could just take the sword without blinking an eye. I mean, I think of what it means to lose my daughter, and she's just one of children worldwide that have been born, that will be born. The unthinkable anguish of seeing predation upon her, the death of her being, the loss of her senses, the pain of rejection, to emote and to feel is a gift.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm pointing to, not guess, what I'm saying here is whatever you think you should be, give yourself the courage to explore that should and to see if it's true. And to know that you can stop anything, anytime, should you have the skill to interrupt that thought, interrupt that speech, interrupt that action, interrupt that relationship, and call a halt to that process and re-envision how you're doing it. But comes back to what we talked about in the earliest minutes of our conversation, is how well do I inhabit conscious choice, which is the difference between unconscious conditioning. So I would say that on your color, on your palette of states of being, what are the 5 or 6 or 7 or 9 colors that you wish to see that defines your being? Don't read it in a book. Don't follow Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism or Vedanta. Don't believe a teacher or a teaching. What are the colors on your emotional palette? And know what authenticity means to you. Fingerprints. No two of us will do it alike. There's no two authentic beings.
Yeah.
Freedom, truth, dignity, you know. So I would only encourage the individual to come back to her roots of the cellular roots of her identity and learn how to inhabit conscious choice as close to the source as possible to interrupt the primordial forces of habit. Sexuality can be wise or ignorant. It's obvious.
It's pretty simple in some ways, isn't it? We make it complicated, and at the end of the day, we have a choice, you know?
We do have a choice, and it involves 2 people, clearly, or group, whatever you do. And it's not really, sex is intimacy is not really sex is intimacy in my book, in my world or in my body, if it's not purely, and I really use the word purely reciprocal. It's based on permission. It's based on trust. And for me at this stage of life, I've done harder, faster, deeper. It's done. You know, and I've done eroticism, which I'm into. But slowing down, there's just something in the poetry of hanging out, leaning back, breathing, listening, talking, feeling. Just, you know, the whisper of the wind. You know, my mom and dad died recently. I may have told you, 96 years old. 76 years they were married. And they cared for one another until their final days. My point is that you go through lots of phases in relationship. You know, sex at 30 is very different than sex at 40 or 50 or 60 or at 70 or 80 or at 90 or 100. You keep thinking it's going to end, but sexuality doesn't really end any more than freedom or wisdom or breathing ends. We're compelled by God to reinvent the energy of beauty. And that's the nature of having sex through beautiful states of mind rather than through orifices alone. For me.
Yeah. So just to finish off, because I know that you need to head off to run a meditation. What are your thoughts on the whole idea and concept of soulmates and twin flames and, you know,
It's so
do
rocking.
we have one partner forever, like your parents that were together for 76 years, and then there's some of us who can't make it through three, like, you know?
Well, I want to bail out on this meditation I'm supposed to lead. It's all quiet. Uh, this is a really cut right to the point. I do believe in soulmates, twin flames, unthinkably beautiful karmic connections.
Yeah.
And if I were to say, Alan, have you had that in this life? Catherine, Janine, Melissa, Liliane, Joe, there may be 6, 7, 8, 9 twin flames.
Yeah.
The most recent ended a year ago. Each of them magnificent. I see it more as, is there one in that evolutional? Well, the most recent one was the most breathtakingly real and intimate, challenging. So I feel that we do have concentric karmic contracts with certain people. You just meet someone and you go, fuck all, man. This is like really rich, just mega bonding. You're so down with each other, you're not even finishing each other's sentences. You're intuiting deeper levels of psychic shared space. Your lovemaking already began a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
It's so natural. Yes, I do believe in that. And at the same time, because it ends doesn't mean that it really ended. It's just evolved. Every woman I've been with, except the last, and it's going to come around at some point, I know it will. We are better and richer and deeper as we are today than ever.
Yeah.
I want to bring these women and these men in my life, my principal tribe, my constellation of transformational people, through me, through lifetimes, through lifetimes of interrelatedness. I want to treat them as gods and goddesses. I cannot be who I am without them. Ubuntu, as it said in South Africa. So yes, the twin flame, but there are about 10 of them. And they're men and women. Who are these special people? And even in the Buddhist tradition, I'll end with this, the Buddha had his tribe of 10 to 20 to 30 people that he talked about repeatedly in those Buddhist texts, that he traveled through incalculable lifetimes together. This is as esoteric as I'll get.
Yeah.
He said, I could not be who I am without them, even enemies. But one in particular, his wife, Yasodhara, before she died, she called the Buddha and told him, we had been man and wife, bonded together through millions of years together, millions of lifetimes, to fulfill the vision. So to answer your question, I think there is someone.
But multiple,
It could be
potentially.
multiple, and it could be that the principal relationship in this life has already come and gone, and you're going to meet again. It just was what it was at that level. It's not that the next relationship is less, but it's not quite as soul deep. And if it is, then that's the one. So stay open. But I do believe in special, unthinkably epic archetypal bonds that you're just so down with one another. But the deal here is, and really for me, is how honest can you be despite your unwillingness to be honest?
Yeah.
If you're not committed and bonded to honesty together, what are you doing? So your commitment, no matter what, is to high quality, frequent high quality time together, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours a week, whatever it needs to be in our busy life, to show up where you speak and I speak and listen. I want to tell you everything that's happened. I'm so attracted to this other man that I met, but I'm not going to do anything with it other than what's already happened because I want to integrate it into our relationship. That is
Wow.
crucial. To me, that is a cellular bond when you're that transparent.
And that takes a huge level of trust and vulnerability to be that honest, you know?
This this
Like
is
a
why going slow.
yeah,
I'm right with you on that. That's
yeah,
why going slow for
yeah.
me today, because I've tended to overlook through chemistry and lust, and through infatuation with I cannot believe how connected we are. That subterfuge of organic romance can camouflage and compromise, in my case, not the other, I can't say that,
Yeah.
my fidelity to radical honesty. You get fearful that they will leave you or doubt you or judge you or reject you, rather than, hey, this is why high quality time and a reaffirmation of the commitment to why we're together is a crucial marriage week by week. My parents made it for 96 years. One could argue it was 95 years too long.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's the other story of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my world today is if I'm going to get married again, and I will, not again, but I've never been
Yeah.
married, but I will get married, it's
Yeah.
week by week. I don't want to be in a long-term relationship. I want
Yeah.
to be in a week-to-week
Not
relationship.
running ahead into the future, thinking about what's ahead rather than just being in the moment.
And then I will say this as well, that in our so-called quest for the instinctual chemistry of the other, I wanted to say looking, but that's too overt, is to be so available. Just,
Yeah.
flowers don't ask the air to be fragrant. Be your beauty. Be the chemistry that you seek, Alan. Breathe oxygen wherever you breathe. And if it's in the eyes and the ears and the mouth of the body of another, breathe into that space and take the pressure of looking out of it and feel. Do you feel what I feel? And have the poetry, the courage to speak about that edge. Have the heart to open to the vulnerability of this shared awakening together and ask, do you feel what I feel? What do you feel? And allow intimacy to be that which you do together. And even in my last relationship, we knew each other for 3 years. Beautiful lady, love her to death. Even once attracted and together, we decided to be celibate together for several months, just to feel. And I really recommend that. To me, conscious celibacy and going slow like that is really one of the most beautiful things we can do together. You optimize, no matter what happens, really being friends.
Yeah.
Because nothing's worse than being so deeply bonded and not talking.
It's, yeah. That's like the ultimate pain. It's like I did a post yesterday about the fine line between pleasure and pain. You know, the pleasure of being in a relationship, but if you're not speaking, it becomes, or communicating, connecting, it becomes painful.
Well, it's traumatic, and you really, after you get over your own self-doubt, you go, why? It's fear
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
shame, worry and regret that I didn't live up to the ethics of what I committed myself to be. I pretended on some level, and now I feel ashamed. Either that or their other partner is so terrified that something will be rekindled, or
Yeah.
both. Otherwise, what is there to lose except everything to gain? I'm so down with you making love with someone else, being in love with someone else, but why limit what we share? That's where I'm at in my life today.
Yeah.
Even among those who've violated us, we haven't even talked about forgiveness and reconciliation,
Yeah.
which is a whole other topic. But so,
It is. And we could keep talking for hours, I feel, as well.
well,
So,
we will when we're in
yeah,
a wood. We will continue
absolutely.
this. We will continue this. And let me
Beautiful.
reiterate, anyone who wants to come, I'm happy to do what I can to support you on every level.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I had room for 100 people and said, you can come free.
Yeah.
My intention is to commune, not to be commercial. I don't take
So
it from anyone.
what's the
Go ahead.
best way for people to communicate with you if they want to come along to your retreats in Bali?
Well, the best way now is on Instagram. They can, you know, Alan Clements World Dharma, or on Facebook, Alan Clements World Dharma, or my website. They can email me. It's going to be up on my website in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Any of those means, you know, and I'm in. I'm easy to find.
Yeah. Perfect.
And so from my heart, thank you. You're a beautiful
Yeah.
woman, a beautiful soul. I'm so blessed to have you in my life. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Alan. I feel the same way about you, and you've brought a new magic into my life and a new way of seeing, particularly men. I will say, like from a woman's point of view, who has gone through all of this sex and love addiction craziness. You know, like just to reestablish good relations and know that good men are out there actually, and it's
Thank
possible.
you.
You know, yeah.
Well, as they say, Aung San Suu Kyi told me one day when I interviewed her, saints are sinners who go on trying. And I
Yeah.
think we're in that long parade towards embodying our humanity, if I can say it that way. A
Yeah.
long way to go, but at the same time, take a big breath and so acknowledge the innate qualities that you seek are right there now. We don't have to create the colors, just find the conditions for their arising.
Yeah.
So,
Beautiful. Yeah.
from my heart to
Thank
yours,
you. Thank
namaste.
you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and we'll see each other again soon. And thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, bye.
Bye.